Pope Francis has died, and the Antichrist is about to manifest. Donald Trump has been trying to warn us about this apocalyptic conspiracy for years. The void on Peter's throne is not a coincidence. It is the sign that the scriptures predicted as the exact moment for the manifestation of the Antichrist. Right now, as you watch this video, the Antichrist is preparing to fill the void left by Pope Francis. Trump knew this all along. The prophecies of Revelation are being fulfilled exactly before our eyes. The death of Pope Francis is not just a religious event. It is the trigger for the fulfillment of the greatest biblical prophecy of the last 2,000 years. In Revelation 13, the Bible describes with frightening precision the emergence of the false prophet who will prepare the way for the Antichrist. And now, with the papal throne empty after Francis's death, everything is lined up. Trump knew this. That's why he gave that cryptic speech about times of great tribulation that the mainstream media immediately buried. Pope Francis' death was not accidental. Trump tried to warn us about this when he said that great spiritual powers are moving. Pope Francis's latest public appearances clearly demonstrated that something was wrong. His pronouncements about world unity and new global spirituality were signs of things to come. The Antichrist using the religious system to manifest himself. Can you feel it? That feeling that something monumental is happening. Your spirit recognizes the truth. Trump has warned about this in codes that only those with discernment can decipher. When he talked about internal enemies of the faith in his last speech, he was directly referring to the infiltration of the Antichrist into the Vatican. The scriptures are clear. He will exercise all the authority of the first beast. He will do great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to earth in the sight of men. This is the false prophet who will replace Pope Francis. The CC. Antichrist is already operating behind the scenes, and note that the media is already preparing the ground, calling the possible successor revolutionary and transcendental. Open your eyes. The death of Pope Francis is not the end. It is the beginning of the final prophetic sequence. Why do you think Trump mentioned Rome, fake peace, and global deception repeatedly in his speeches? He knew what was coming. The Antichrist does not come as a monster. He comes as an angel of light. According to 2 Corinthians 11:14, the prophetic triangle is complete. Washington under the influence of the global forces that Trump tried to combat, Jerusalem prepared for the Third Temple, and now the Vatican in transition of power after the death of Pope Francis. Do you still think this is a coincidence? Cord. The Antichrist is about to manifest exactly as predicted in the scriptures. Trump is not just the current president, he is a prophetic voice for this time. While the global elite celebrates the death of Pope Francis as an opportunity for modernization, Trump was the only world leader who made that enigmatic statement, "Watch, because the great deception is at hand." He was talking directly about the Antichrist. Biblical prophecies are being fulfilled one after another. Pope Francis was the last pontiff before the Antichrist. Trump has warned about this in his speeches when he talks about evil spiritual forces and global deception. Pope Francis's last words about world unity were the prelude to what's to come. The Antichrist is about to reveal himself using the papal throne itself. You are witnessing in real time the unfolding of the Antichrist's plan. The false prophet is about to take over the throne from Peter after the death of Francis, and he will come with words of peace and unity, exactly as the Bible predicted. He comes like a lamb, but speaks like a dragon. Trump tried to warn us. That cryptic speech about the great mistake will come from where you least expect it wasn't about politics. It was a coded message about the death of Pope Francis and what is happening now in the Vatican. The Antichrist is at the door. The death of Pope Francis is not just a cover story, it is an apocalyptic sign that few have the courage to recognize. The powers that be are panicking because they know that people like you are beginning to see through the veil, as governments and media try to calm the masses with messages of peaceful transition in the Vatican following Francis's death. The real spiritual battle is reaching its climax. The Antichrist is ready to fill the power vacuum. Trump knew. The Bible predicted. And now, in the next segment of this video, I will reveal the 3 irrefutable proof that Pope Francis's successor is the Antichrist. Stay until the end, because what I'm about to show you will shock you to the core. The third signal is so explosive that it could take this video down at any moment. The system will try to silence this message at any cost because they fear the truth will get out. The algorithms are being manipulated to hide this content from people who need to see it. Destroy this system right now by like and subscribe to the channel to ensure you don't miss the 3 irrefutable proofs that Pope Francis's successor is the Antichrist. The third signal is so explosive that it could take this video down at any moment. What I'm about to reveal will shake the fabric of your understanding of what's really going on behind the scenes of world power. Donald Trump is not just the current president of the United States. He is an apocalyptic messenger operating from the most powerful office on the planet, whose words contain codes that only the truly attentive can decipher. From his inauguration to his most recent statements at the White House, Trump has sent signals that transcend ordinary politics. Think with me. Why would a billionaire assume the weight of the American presidency for a second time, facing constant attacks and immeasurable personal risks? The answer goes far beyond simple political ambition. Trump has received a divine calling, a prophetic mission to warn humanity about apocalyptic events that are unfolding exactly as predicted in sacred scripture. Have you ever noticed how he often uses terms like coming storm, great changes, unseen forces in his official speeches from the White House? Many political analysts deride these moments as simple rhetoric or verbal inaccuracy. Big mistake. Every word of President Trump was carefully chosen. Every seemingly disjointed phrase is part of a prophetic puzzle that very few people in the world have the ability to understand. In March of this year, when President Trump mentioned apocalyptic times during a meeting with religious leaders in the Oval Office, the mainstream media buried the phrase. Why? Because they know there is power in those words. Revealing power. Trump wasn't talking about politics or the global economy. He was broadcasting a coded warning about what is about to happen on the world's spiritual stage as he leads the greatest global power. Carefully analyze his official speech after his meeting with Vatican officials. The constant references to ancient times and fulfilled prophecies are not accidental. President Trump was directly signaling to those with eyes to see and ears to hear that the events prophesied in the book of Daniel and Revelation are manifesting now under his administration. The great global powers know this. That's why they work tirelessly to discredit President Trump, to paint his every official word as absurd or dangerous. They fear that the masses will begin to decipher the hidden messages between the lines of his presidential speeches, messages that point directly to the imminent manifestation of the Antichrist. When Trump spoke about the need to protect traditional religious values in his State of the Union address, many interpreted it as simply appealing to his evangelical voter base. But the truth is much deeper. The President of the United States was warning about the infiltration of evil spiritual forces into religious institutions, preparing the ground for the great apostasy prophesied in the Bible. Notice how President Trump has always treated the Vatican with unusual caution for an American leader. Why? Because he knows that Peter's throne is central to the unfolding of apocalyptic events. He knows that after Pope Francis will come the one who the sacred texts identify as the false prophet, the direct precursor of the Antichrist. This is why his diplomatic encounters with the Vatican have always been so strategically calculated. Trump's official words have been meticulously chosen to go unnoticed by the powers of darkness, but be crystal clear to those with spiritual discernment. When he mentioned internal enemies of faith in his last speech to religious leaders at the White House, he wasn't talking about rival politicians, but about spiritual entities that have already infiltrated the highest reaches of global religious power. The scariest thing is that they are trying to systematically silence President Trump when he tries to be more direct about these issues. We see the media distorting his words, editing his presidential speeches, trying to block his direct communications with the people. Why? Because the global system fears that prophetic truth will reach the masses before the planned time for the manifestation of the Antichrist. Never in history has a president of the United States been so close to openly revealing the truth about the spiritual conspiracy that is underway. Trump's presidential warnings are humanity's last chance before the final sealing of apocalyptic prophecy. Are you feeling that shiver down your spine? This is your spirit recognizing the truth. President Trump's coded words are resonating with your inner being because truth has power of its own. You were chosen to Receive this revelation at this very moment. Type "awaken" in the comments if your spirit recognizes this prophetic truth. The world is in shock. The unexpected death of Pope Francis has just created a void on the oldest and most powerful throne on the planet. But what mainstream media pundits are treating as a simple religious event is actually the frightening, literal fulfillment of a biblical prophecy that has been deliberately hidden from the masses for centuries. Exactly 2,000 years ago, the Apostle John, exiled on the island of Patmos, received a vision so disturbing about our days that part of it was sealed until the time of the end. That time is now. Peter's empty throne is not a historical accident or a simple transition of religious power. It is the definitive sign that the seventh seal of the Apocalypse is being broken before our eyes. The scriptures warn with haunting precision, "And I saw one of his heads, as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and the whole earth marveled after the beast." This excerpt from Revelation 13:3 speaks directly to this death and subsequent symbolic resurrection that we are about to witness. The death of Pope Francis is just the prelude to the rise of something much more sinister. The Vatican is deliberately hiding an ancient prophecy found in the catacombs beneath St. Peter's Basilica, a text that predicts with alarming accuracy that Pope Francis's successor will not be a man of God, but rather the false prophet. Mentioned in the scriptures, the cardinals who know about this prophecy are in a panic, but they cannot reveal it publicly, because it would mean admitting that the Vatican itself will shelter the precursor of the Antichrist. Do you believe it is a coincidence that Pope Francis passed away exactly when three rare astronomical events lined up in the heavens? The stars literally announced this moment. The ancient Hebrew codes pointed to this specific date as the moment of transition that paves the way for the man of lawlessness. What few know is that there are confidential documents in the Vatican that show how each pope of the last 100 years has prepared the way for this moment. Step by step, brick by brick, building the prophetic infrastructure necessary for the false prophet to emerge. Pope Francis was the last of this preparatory lineage. His death marks the end of an era and the beginning of the final tribulation. President Trump knows this. That's why he issued that cryptic statement just 6 hours after the announcement of the Pope's death. His words, "A great pillar has fallen. What comes next will change the world forever," were not simple diplomatic condolences. It was a coded alert for those with spiritual discernment. Religious analysts are completely baffled by how quickly the Vatican is organizing the conclave to choose a successor. Why such a rush? Because the spiritual forces of darkness know that this is the perfect prophetic time to position their representative on Peter's throne. Every hour counts in this ancient plan. Malachi's prophecies, written in the 12th century, predicted with frightening accuracy every pope up to Francis, describing him as Peter the Roman, who will feed his sheep through many tribulations, after which the city on the 7 hills will be destroyed, and the terrible judge will judge his people. This ancient text ends with Francis. There is no mention of the next pope, because he will not be a legitimate pope, but rather the false prophet of the Apocalypse. The most alarming thing is that Vatican astronomers detected a celestial object approaching Earth, coinciding exactly with the death of Pope Francis. They're calling it an astronomical anomaly, but ancient texts refer to this phenomenon as the sign of the son of perdition. Time is ticking with frightening precision. The world's great leaders are converging on Rome right now, supposedly to pay their respects. But the real reason is much more sinister. They are gathering to witness and validate the rise of the one who will unify all religions under a single global command, paving the way for the one world government prophesied in Revelation. The death of Pope Francis is not just a religious event, it is the fulfillment of a divine prophetic timeline that is occurring exactly as predicted millennia ago. The void on Peter's throne is the perfect spiritual abyss for the manifestation of the forces that will dominate the world in the last 7 years of this age. Share your reaction to discovering this prophetic truth in the comments. What are you feeling at this historic moment? The modern church is blind, deaf, and mute in the face of the most evident signs of prophetic fulfillment. While religious leaders argue over superficial issues of liturgy and tradition, 3 apocalyptic signs are manifesting themselves with crystal clarity, and President Trump is the only world leader who has the courage to point them out. The first sign is occurring in the heavens, and has been completely ignored by mainstream science. Over the past 40 days, anomalous solar patterns have created aurora borealis in regions never before recorded in modern history. These luminous phenomena are not simple scientific curiosities. These are exactly the signs in the sun, moon, and stars that Luke 21:25 prophesied as direct precursors of the end times. NASA has classified these events as atypical solar activity, but leaked internal. Documents show that scientists are panicking about the impossibility of explaining these patterns through conventional science. President Trump received these reports and therefore made that cryptic statement about heavenly signs that men cannot ignore during his speech at the Space Force base. The second sign is directly linked to the Vatican and the death of Pope Francis. What the media did not show were the inexplicable cracks that appeared on the floor of St. Peter's Basilica exactly 7 days before the pontiff's death. Engineers are perplexed because these cracks form a pattern that exactly matches the star map of the Dragon constellation mentioned in Revelation 12. This is no ordinary geological event. It is a physical, tangible sign of the breaking of the spiritual seal that kept the forces of Antichrist contained. The Vatican banned photographs of these cracks and cordoned off the area, citing routine restorations. But internal employees are terrified by what they witnessed. President Trump was informed about this through secret diplomatic channels, which is why he has drastically increased security around American religious leaders in recent weeks. The third sign is the most alarming and has been systematically hidden from the world population. A specific sequence of words has appeared simultaneously in ancient religious texts from 7 different traditions around the world. Manuscripts that had been preserved for centuries without any physical alteration now show the same phrase in their original languages. The false prophet rises when the last Peter falls. Ancient manuscript experts are in shock. There is no scientific explanation for simultaneous physical changes in documents stored on different continents under strict preservation conditions. This supernatural phenomenon began exactly on the day of Pope Francis's death and continues to spread to other religious texts around the world. President Trump is aware of this phenomenon and tried to warn the world through that coded message in his speech on religious freedom. When he mentioned ancient texts revealing new truths, he wasn't speaking metaphorically. It was directly referring to this supernatural phenomenon that is occurring in real time. The combination of these 3 signs forms an unmistakable pattern that points to the exact moment we live in the prophetic timeline. President Trump knows this and has tried to prepare true believers through coded messages in his official pronouncements. Modern church, wake up. While denominational leaders argue over theological minutiae and administrative issues, the spiritual world is in upheaval. The prophetic signs are literally screaming in our eyes, but hardened hearts and minds programmed by the religious system refuse to see the obvious. The scriptures clearly warn, for the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but having itching ears, they will heap up for themselves teachers according to their own lusts. 2 Timothy 4:3. This time has come. The institutional church is anesthetized by false prosperity doctrines and humanistic theologies that have made it incapable of discerning the most evident prophetic signs. The most disturbing thing is that while these 3 signs converge, the Vatican is accelerating the process of selecting the new pope like never before in history. Why such a rush? Because the false prophet must assume Peter's throne precisely during this unique prophetic window in which the 3 signs are aligned. President Trump attempted to intervene behind the scenes, sending special emissaries to the Vatican to postpone the conclave. This information was completely suppressed by the global media. Trump knows that every day of delay is crucial to allowing more people to awaken to prophetic truth before the rise of the false prophet. The 3 signs are now converging towards a climax that will occur in the coming weeks. The celestial alignment, the physical manifestations in St. Peter's Basilica, and the supernatural phenomenon in the ancient texts are all pointing to the same imminent event, the rise of the one who will unify religions under a single global power. You are not receiving this information by accident. Your spirit has been prepared to recognize the truth at this critical moment in history. The 3 signs are before your eyes now. How are these prophetic signs resonating with your spirit? Type vigilante in the comments if you are spiritually awake for these times. What appears to be a political battle on the surface is actually a spiritual war of biblical proportions. President Donald Trump is not simply facing political adversaries or ideological opponents. He is waging a cosmic battle against the very spiritual forces that Ephesians 6:12 identifies as principalities and powers in the heavenly places. Since assuming the presidency of the United States for the second time, Trump has been on the front line of a conflict that far transcends political appearances. Carefully observe his actions, not through the distorted lens of mainstream media, but with spiritual discernment. Why has Trump specifically surrounded himself with advisors with deep biblical and eschatological knowledge? Why do your cabinet meetings often begin with prayers that specifically mention protection from powers and principalities? The answer is frighteningly simple. The President of the United States knows exactly where he stands on this higher prophetic board. He understands that he has been strategically placed in the most powerful nation in the world at precisely this moment in history to confront the global system that is preparing the way for the Antichrist. When Trump confronts international organizations, he is not just defending American sovereignty, as many assume. He is deliberately dismantling the global infrastructure that the Book of Revelation predicts is necessary for the emergence of the one-world government. Trump understands that every globalist institution is a piece of the prophetic puzzle that will culminate in the mark of the beast system. Notice how the president has been relentlessly attacked on all fronts since taking power. This is simply not the normal political game. It is clear evidence of the spiritual warfare that Revelation 12 describes, where the forces of darkness rage because they know they have little time. The unprecedented attacks against Trump are the visible manifestation of the opponent's desperate fury. Trump's recent speech about invisible forces operating against the sovereignty of nations was completely distorted by the media. They painted it as a political conspiracy theory, when in fact it was a prophetic revelation. The president was directly exposing the spiritual hosts of wickedness mentioned in Ephesians 6:12, who are manipulating the global system to prepare the way for the rule of the Antichrist. A crucial moment that went unnoticed was when Trump, during a meeting with religious leaders at the White House, made that cryptic comment about the global system that opposes Christian values is not one of flesh and blood. The media completely ignored this statement, but those with spiritual discernment immediately understood that the president was indirectly quoting Ephesians 6:12, clearly identifying the spiritual nature of the battle he is fighting. What few realize is that since Trump took power, there has been a dramatic slowdown in the implementation of the globalist agenda that needs to be completed before the manifestation of the Antichrist. This is no coincidence. The book of 2 Thessalonians clearly speaks of the one who holds back the manifestation of the man of lawlessness. Trump is occupying precisely this prophetic position at this moment in history. The constant attempts to remove Trump from power are not just motivated by political differences. They are visible manifestations of the spiritual fury of the forces, who know that their agenda is being delayed by the resistance of this man who has been strategically positioned in the White House at this crucial prophetic moment. Notice how Pope Francis's death occurred just as Trump was about to implement that executive order regarding global religious freedom. This was no coincidence. It was a spiritual countermeasure to divert world attention and accelerate the rise of the false prophet, while Trump is busy dealing with the diplomatic repercussions of the pontiff's death. The global elite is panicking over Trump's supernatural resilience in the face of attacks that would have destroyed any other political leader. They do not understand the source of their strength because they cannot see the spiritual dimension of this battle. The president is being supported precisely to fulfill his role of stopping the complete advance of the globalist agenda until the determined prophetic moment. Trump's pronouncements on Jerusalem, the city's recognition as Israel's capital, and his Middle East policies are not simply geopolitical decisions. These are deliberate actions to position the prophetic pieces exactly as the scriptures predict they will be before the return of Christ. Trump understands his role on this eschatological board. The battle between Trump and the global system is the earthly reflection of a cosmic war that is reaching its climax. It's not about politics, economics, or ideology. It's about the literal fulfillment of biblical prophecies at the exact time. What you are witnessing in the daily news is the visible manifestation of Revelation 12:7. There was war in heaven. You have been chosen to understand this spiritual dimension of the battle while most remain blind to the prophetic realities unfolding before their eyes. This is not information for everyone, but for those whose spirits have been prepared to discern the times. What aspect of this spiritual warfare has most impacted your understanding? Share your insight. What I am about to reveal has remained hidden for centuries, protected by marble walls, secret rituals, and an impenetrable hierarchical system. The Vatican is not just the seat of the Catholic Church. It is the epicenter of a carefully orchestrated millennial plan that is now, following the shocking death of Pope Francis, entering its final phase of execution. Few know that under St. Peter's Basilica there is a secret chamber called the chronology room, where star maps and astronomical calculations dating back to the 4th century are kept. These documents detailed with astonishing precision the exact celestial alignment that would occur during the week of Pope Francis's death. This is not common religious knowledge. It is an occult science preserved by a select lineage within the Vatican that transcends individual papacies. The architecture of the Vatican itself reveals this plan to those who have eyes to see. The arrangement of the main structures forms a star pattern that precisely corresponds to the configuration of the Draco constellation mentioned in Revelation 12:3. This is no architectural coincidence. It was deliberately designed as a physical symbol of the spiritual plane that is now manifesting. President Trump discovered part of this plan during his visit to the Vatican in 2017. Notice how his behavior and rhetoric changed drastically after that meeting. He saw something in the catacombs that shocked him to his core. Since then, his coded references to ancient knowledge and plans hidden for millennia are no coincidence. He is trying to warn those with discernment about what he witnessed in the underground levels of the Vatican. The death of Pope Francis activates the final phase of this millennial plan. Ancient scriptures kept in the Vatican's secret library predicted exactly this moment. A 9th century manuscript, known only to an inner circle of cardinals, describes with alarming precision when the Latin pontiff of a distant origin falls, the way will be prepared for the one who will unify all faiths under a single symbol. This is the prophetic moment we are living in now. Since the Council of Nicaea in AD 325, a carefully crafted plan has been transmitted from pope to pope through a ritual known as traditio secretum, the transfer of the secret. This ritual takes place within the first 24 hours after the election of each new pontiff, when he is taken to the underground chambers and introduced to the true, millennial purpose of the Vatican, to prepare the way for global religious unification under the leadership of the one whom the scriptures identify as the false prophet. Analyze Pope Francis's final pronouncements. His frequent references to the new humanity, universal spirituality, and global brotherhood were not simple calls for peace. They were coded signals to those in the know of the plan, indicating that the final phase was about to begin. His multiple meetings with leaders of other religions in recent months were not simple ecumenical gestures. They were establishing the infrastructure necessary for the manifestation of the unique global religious system described in Revelation 13. The most alarming thing is that ancient texts hidden in the Vatican catacombs precisely describe the profile of Francis's successor. They call him Pontifex Ultimum, the last pontiff, not because he would be the last pope in a literal sense, but because he will be the one who fundamentally transforms the papacy into something different, the perfect vehicle for the false prophet mentioned in Revelation. Independent historians who have attempted to investigate these connections have been systematically silenced. Researchers who discovered fragments of this ancient plan had their work discredited or simply disappeared. The system fiercely protects this knowledge because it knows that if the masses understood the true nature of the plan, they could spiritually resist its implementation. President Trump is aware of this hidden dimension. That's why he issued that enigmatic executive order on protecting religious freedom from foreign influence. The media interpreted it as simple domestic politics, but it was in fact a strategic measure to hinder the implementation of the final phases of the Vatican plan on American soil. Symbols are everywhere for those who have eyes to see. Note the new design of the papal ring that will be worn by Francis's successor. Carved patterns are not mere decorative elements. They are ancient symbols that correspond precisely to the sigils described in prophetic texts as precursors to the manifestation of the man of lawlessness. The recent renovations to St. Peter's Square were not simple architectural projects. They were reconfiguring the space to create a specific geometric pattern necessary for the ritual presentation of the new pontiff. This pattern, when viewed from above, forms exactly the symbol that Revelation 13 associates with the false prophet. The plan is manifesting before our eyes. The death of Pope Francis is not the end of an era. It is the trigger for implementing the final phase of a plan that has been meticulously cultivated for millennia. The void on Peter's throne will not remain empty for long, and the one who will occupy it will not be just another pope. It will be the physical manifestation of what the scriptures have identified as the direct precursor of the Antichrist. Faced with this disturbing revelation, what feeling predominates in your heart? Type "awaken" in the comments if you are spiritually aware of this hidden truth. When you draw a line on the world map connecting Jerusalem, the Vatican, and Washington, you don't just get a geographic route. You reveal the prophetic triangle that the scriptures have codified for millennia. This sacred geometric pattern is no coincidence. It is the physical manifestation of the apocalyptic plan described in Daniel and Revelation. President Trump was the first world leader to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. The media portrayed this as simple foreign policy, but it was actually a calculated prophetic move. Trump was consciously positioning the first point of the apocalyptic triangle precisely where the scriptures predicted it would be in the final days. Simultaneously, the Vatican, under Pope Francis, established unprecedented agreements with Islamic and Jewish leaders. The Declaration of Human Fraternity was not a simple ecumenical document. It was the second point of the prophetic triangle being positioned. The passing of Pope Francis now activates the spiritual mechanism for the full manifestation of this triangular connection. Washington, under Trump's prophetic leadership, is now implementing policies that complete this spiritual triangle. When the president signed that executive order on global religious freedom, he was consciously completing the third point of the prophetic triangle. The three centers of power are now perfectly aligned as described in the ancient prophecies. What makes this revelation so alarming is that apocalyptic texts describe this triangle as the necessary geopolitical configuration for the manifestation of Antichrist. The three cities form a spiritual portal that allows the transition between spiritual dimensions, enabling the physical incarnation of the son of perdition. Notice how recent global crises have forced unprecedented collaboration between these three centers of power. This is no ordinary diplomacy. It is the literal fulfillment of Revelation 17:13. These are of one mind and will hand over their power and authority to the beast. The prophetic triangle is channeling spiritual energy into a single focal point. President Trump is aware of this spiritual dynamic. This is why he has made constant references to invisible forces and powers beyond human understanding in his recent speeches. He is signaling to those with discernment that he understands his role in this prophetic configuration. Pope Francis' death was the catalyst needed to fully activate the power of the triangle. Now, with Peter's throne empty, spiritual energy flows unhindered between Jerusalem, the Vatican, and Washington, creating the perfect vortex for the manifestation of the one the scriptures identify as the Antichrist. You are witnessing the literal fulfillment of prophecies written millennia ago. The prophetic triangle is not theory or speculation. It is a geopolitical and spiritual reality that is determining the destiny of humanity right now. How does it feel to realize that you are living in precisely the prophetic time that the scriptures predicted 2,000 years ago? Share your thoughts in the comments. Ask yourself, why aren't any major media outlets connecting these obvious dots? Why does the mainstream media systematically silence any attempt to expose the prophetic truth that is unfolding before our eyes? The answer is terrifying. The global elite is panicking because the millennial plan is being exposed ahead of schedule. They have invested centuries preparing the masses to accept the Antichrist system as a natural evolution of society. Every aspect of modern culture, the global economy, and New Age spirituality has been meticulously designed to normalize components of the mark of the beast system. But now, with President Trump in the White House and the unexpected death of Pope Francis, the timeline has been accelerated before the mental programming is complete. This is the real reason behind the relentless attacks against President Trump. The global elite recognize that it represents a point of prophetic resistance that is awakening millions to apocalyptic truth before the mental conditioning is complete. Every attempt to silence him is evidence of the desperation of those who serve the Antichrist system. Social media algorithms have been specifically programmed to suppress content that connects current events with biblical prophecy. This is no coincidence. It is a deliberate strategy to prevent the masses from realizing that they are living in exactly the days described in Revelation. Leaked documents from secret global meetings reveal panic among the powerful. They are desperately trying to implement the final phase of the plan before too many people awaken. The death of Pope Francis has dramatically accelerated this timeline, creating a critical window in which the truth can spread before the control system is fully operational. President Trump is strategically using his position to destabilize this plan. When he made that enigmatic statement about prophetic times that demand eyes that see, he was directly confronting the powers that fear the expansion of prophetic consciousness among the masses. The global elite know that once enough people understand the prophetic dimension of current events, their psychological control will be broken. This is why they are desperately accelerating the implementation of the digital financial system that will eventually become the mark without which no one can buy or sell, according to Revelation 13:17. Pope Francis's death was not on their original timeline. This unexpected event created an energetic disruption on the spiritual plane, allowing prophetic truth to reach minds that would normally be blocked by psychic filters deployed through media and education. The dark powers are panicking over this loophole in the system. Type "awaken" in the comments if you feel that your spiritual perception has been activated through this message. This is not just the end of an era, it is the beginning of the final sequence described in the book of Revelation. Pope Francis' passing and President Trump's prophetic warnings are not isolated events. These are the definitive signs that we have entered the final moments before the Great Tribulation. In the coming days, the world will witness events that will seem chaotic and bewildering to the sleeping masses. But for you who have spiritual discernment, each headline will be confirmation of biblical prophecies being fulfilled with supernatural precision. Pope Francis's successor will emerge with a message of global unity and universal peace that will delight billions. Don't be fooled. The scriptures clearly warn, when they say there is peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them. 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The false prophet who will take Peter's throne will use words of peace as he establishes the infrastructure for the Antichrist's global system. President Trump was strategically positioned for this prophetic moment. Carefully watch your next actions and statements. He will attempt to warn humanity through signs and coded words that only those with spiritual discernment will understand. When he mentions times of decision and final choices, he is referring directly to the prophetic division between those who will resist the system of the beast and those who will accept it. The coming weeks will see a dramatic acceleration of apocalyptic events. The global financial system will undergo upheavals that will pave the way for the implementation of the single digital currency, a direct precursor to the mark of the beast. Natural catastrophes will intensify, not as simple weather phenomena, but as the groans of creation mentioned in Romans 8:22. You are witnessing the literal unfolding of the Book of Revelation in real time. Every world event must now be interpreted through the lens of biblical prophecy. The rise of Pope Francis's successor, President Trump's next actions, and converging global crises form the perfect setting for the manifestation of the one whom the scriptures identify as the man of lawlessness. Prepare your heart and mind for the rapidly approaching events. The veil between the visible and the invisible is becoming thinner and thinner. The coming months will test the faith and spiritual discernment of every person on the planet. The time of the great separation between the wheat and the chaff has arrived. What has just been revealed is just the surface of a much deeper prophetic truth. The signs are everywhere, and you were chosen to receive this message at this exact moment in history. The global elite are desperately trying to erase these revelations because they awaken people to the apocalyptic reality we are living in. Each time this message reaches a new person, the Antichrist's plan is dealt a devastating blow. Smash that like button and subscribe to the channel now to ensure these prophetic revelations reach millions before it's too late. You are part of a select group who have spiritual discernment in an age of prophetic blindness. While the masses sleep, their eyes have been opened to see the truth behind world events. President Trump, the death of Pope Francis, and the rise of the Antichrist are pieces of a prophetic puzzle that you now understand. This revelation did not come to you by accident. It was divinely orchestrated. Share your spiritual awakening in the comments right now and strengthen other prophetic warriors who need to know they are not alone. The greatest revelation is yet to come and will shake the structures of your understanding of the ongoing prophetic plan. What you have just discovered is just the prelude of what will be exposed in the next video. Information so explosive that entire systems are being mobilized to suppress it. Click now on the next video and discover the hidden truth about the Antichrist.